Welcome to What Are Those, a show that explores the art of sneaker culture. I'm your host, Adam Butler, back with another episode. Thank you so kindly for being here. So on today's show, I'm happy to welcome activist, community leader, my friend, Tony Lewis Jr. to the show to talk about not only his dope sneaker game, which I had no idea he had, I ain't gonna lie. Man got a mean sneaker game. But also to talk about culture, how to preserve that culture, and how big brands can help with that effort. Let's jump right into it. Tony, what up, man?
What's up, bro?
It's been a minute since we really rapped, bro. I'm happy to see you, man. But just how's life treating you?
Yeah, same here. First of all, thanks for having me, man. I'm well. You know, the wife, the kids, they're good, so I'm good. I would be, lying if I didn't say, in the work that I do, you already know it's always something, and a lot of things are going on in the city. But for the most part, personally, man, I'm doing well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad to hear that, man. We're gonna talk about all of that. You know what I mean? I gave you a good intro to all of the Fox and iHeart listeners, you know what I mean, that may not be familiar with what you got going on and what happens in DC, you know what I mean? But I wanted to have you on this show, bro, because I've been impressed by your sneaker rotation lately, bro. I
appreciate that.
I mean,
that's a lot. That means a lot coming from you. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. You know what I mean? I that's the thing I love about sneakers is that, it connects so many people and there's just so many angles, but you and we from DC. And I talked about this on this show a few times, man, about the lineage of DC culture as it connects to DC fashion. You know what I mean? People that are familiar with your story know you've been around, you've seen people, you've been around many groups of people, you know what I mean? And you know people that are in the streets and people that are on the corporate side as well. You know what I mean? I want to take it back a bit and just talk about what fashion and sneakers, but just fashion as a whole means to just like DC culture, in your opinion.
Yeah, I think if you particularly if you talk about like native Black DC culture, it's synonymous. It's a part of the fabric of everything that we do culturally is a part of, like, being fresh and having the latest, whatever on, I mean, obviously New Balance and any basketball, Nike, right, from Joys to Barclays to Phone Posits to whatever. I'm just saying whatever's hot at the time. And then now we live in a time where even things that was like a thing in the past is not a thing. But I'm just talking about culturally coming up.
Yeah.
Whatever was out, whatever was new, that's what you did if you was from DC. And not to be long-winded, but also in terms of growing up, and going to other places, where now, and I think it's more of a national type of thing. When we was growing up, like, you can almost tell where somebody was from by what they had on. And when we would go places, rather it was Phone Posits or, obviously New Balance and stuff back then, some of my other people in other places was not getting down with them joints like we were. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, that's a fact, bro. First of all, don't ever worry about being long-winded on the podcast, bro. Like that's what we.
All right, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to get to the question, like, you know what I'm saying? But like, for real, Jordans, all that, or the way we wore out, that's another thing, the way we tied our shoes or didn't tie them, right?
Yeah.
Like, all of them kind of nuances, bro, was real, cultural here in DC,
Yeah, I feel like here in DC, there was like a uniform. There was just like this need to set ourselves apart, man. Like DC always kind of, I don't feel like we got respect, honestly, from globally. You know what I mean? Like maybe on an individual basis, like if you was a New York dude, you met some DC dudes, you understood DC dudes was like serious people, you had respect. But like when it came to hip hop, our music, our culture, a lot of people, I felt like
because we didn't have any mavens though.
Go for it.
Yeah, right. we didn't have representation in those spaces though. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's quite possible that some of the standard bearers for fashion or sneaker culture could have really and truly got inspired by people from DC. But because there weren't DC people in entertainment, whether it's music or movies or whatever. Sort of that the originators of that style or those styles would be the person that people saw, and you never have a clue that person came to Howard Homecoming and saw some DC. I'm just giving that as a hypothetical, but that's why. But that is the reason.
Yeah, that hypothetical could very well be true. Like Diddy went to Howard. Diddy was a person who was influential in hip hop and fashion. He spent his formative years here at Howard University. He talks about it all the time. How many people, like you say, how many celebrities went to Howard University, came down here, soaked up a lot of, and mind you, and they'll say it, you know what I mean? But they came here and soaked up the culture and then broadened it, but for the people here, I think it was still like this. And I think it was a good thing, honestly, because it made us creative. Just kind of like chip on our shoulder, like, but we from the city, we from DC, we from the DMV. We want to represent our thing. We're going to have our own clothing companies. We're going to have our own look. Y'all wearing this, we going to wear that. We wearing foams. Y'all wearing Timbs, we wearing foams. Y'all wearing New Balance. Y'all wearing, Reeboks, whatever. We wearing New Balance. That's how we going. You know what I'm
saying? Exactly. And that's real. Not to mention the people from this area that went to other places as well, right? Whether it was, HBCUs or other colleges, whether went to places like, New York and LA for work, whatever it was, and brought out style and people saw it and, replicated it. And then it just became a part of, you got to think like, we never had musicians or rappers, if you will, that help cultivate what will be considered style to a lot of people. It's just not what happened, but that don't mean that those people didn't interact with DC people in their regular lives.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we've always, I think, just had a very unique style. And again, sneakers always been a part of it. And high end. Even growing up, when you talk about like the Gucci sneaker, right, and things like that, even back then, aside from like Jordan, but like the Gucci stuff, you can go to the companies and ask where those things were bought the most at. You know what I mean? But even in that, or like Gucci sneaker, K-Swiss, stuff like that. When we was growing up, the Reebok, the Reebok, the Classics, the Revenge, the other joints that was like cream had the silver on the back. Like these was all like, but that was that 80s swag. Diodor, Asics, Lottos. You remember Lottos?
I remember Lottos.
The color on the jump. Remember Lottos?
Yes, dog.
E-Tonics. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like all this stuff that's street fashion. Sergio Tacchini sweatsuits, Lecoq Sportifs, like all that that's Washington DC, bro. But again, we just did not. Again, we didn't have people on TV, but also we didn't dress from TV. That's the other thing I think for us that I think is really important in terms of our how stylish Washington is, because we didn't get our style off of TV. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like to your point, in the advent of Madness, and then later with all the other brands, We Are One, Shooters, All Days, Hobo, on the list go on and on, up to right now, like with the museum, like we've always done that. DC, we've always done that. Yeah.
Shout out to the museum. Had them on the show a couple of weeks ago, man. And I said that to them, like, they're part of that lineage. You listen, some of the people that have gotten on the Wale's of the world, folks like that, right? Do you think that someone like Wale is responsible for shining that light on DC, on its culture, its music, and its fashion?
I mean, undoubtedly, that it's like no question. And it was interesting. We talking about how DC was maybe ahead of its time in certain things, or didn't get the credit. He's an offshoot of that. He doesn't get his credit.
I was going to go there.
Right? When you start talking about all the sneaker culture and all this, from the phone pauses to the dunks to the all, he was doing all that and on all that, the retro Jordans and all that. Like a lot of them other industry dudes that's now known or synonymous with sneaker culture, that they wasn't doing. He put them on that. I'm just keeping it real. And but again, he's like an unsung hero in that regard. He doesn't get his due. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I remember Wale was up at the DTLR working at the joint. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're right. Like, and if you dig deep and you'll find like a complex article about it or someone to give him the shout out, but he's not he doesn't get the respect in that realm that I feel like he should, because he is a fashion icon and he is representative of what DC is. I mean, when I think about like, and I'll ask you this, man, like when I think about being a Washingtonian, besides like, and I mean, you could broaden it to politics and everything, but just when I think about being a Washingtonian, I think about being an originator. That's what makes me most proud about being from here, is that I felt like this city, the way we do things, even right now, what's going on, we ain't got to get to, but you know, even like what's going on, even with like our mayoral race and some of the candidates that's in it, it's like, wow, that's a creative thought, right? For someone to, you know, to join that race, you know what I mean? Like some of the people, the colorful characters in there, you know what I mean? And with all respect, right? You know, so like I think about our town, I think about a place that is colorful and is creative, but the stereotype of it is this great place where nothing but politicians work, and a lot of people just kind of move here to work real fast and in gray buildings. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. No, but it's, you know, the native culture here is deep and it's rich. And part of that though is being an individual, right? Like I think even you know, with separated Washington from like other major cities, even especially those that have been, you know, sort of I don't want to say synonymous with crime, but known to have a functioning underworld. That we've also been a place that had never adopted gangs, right, in the more traditional sense, right? So I think that's another. I think that's another example of how being an individual here is too important to even. You might be a part of a crew from your neighborhood, but being an individual here is paramount, and that is often represented sort of like, you know, in your style. Yeah, for sure.
For sure, man. Let's talk about you for a moment. Well, for a while. You are a person who I feel like has been vitally important to the culture of DC, because you're able to speak to two different audiences of people, right? You're able to speak with people that are, you know, are in the government that can create change from a, you know, a government standpoint, can write bills, can, you know, interact change. And then you're able to, let's just keep it real, speak to people on the street level and speak that language to them. And that's what I think makes you important. Why, I'm trying to figure out how to ask this, bro. What keeps you going in that? I know that's a very broad question, right? But that's a question I have. Like, what keeps you, what wakes you up in the morning, and what keeps you going and doing this work that is often thankless?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, man. One that I really appreciate. I mean,
no problem.
I think it's like where I'm from and what I've been through, my proximity to the struggles of people, right? My survivor's guilt. It all causes me to, you know, want to help daily, but more importantly, the fact that I've been able to help. I really think that is the work. It hasn't been for naught. Like the progress, the results, right? Every day I see somebody who they may have came in contact with me 20 years ago and say, "Well, Tone, man, I'm still working," or "You changed my life," or, you know, that kind of stuff keeps me going. And you know, there's still a need. I don't feel like that I'm at a point or things are in a state where I can transition to something else, you know, yet, right? It's like I'm still needed. And you know, I think my family has really pushed me even further. I know what I want this city to look like for my little girl. So like every day, you know, I'm trying to make our city a better place, right? Not just like more broadly, but even selfishly for my youngins. But you know, over the 22 years of service, you know, I've been blessed to help a lot of people. But the other side of that coin, those people have also helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not just it, you know, it's I get a lot out of my work. I'm passionate about it. But also I think, to your point as well that you made earlier, and one I appreciate is that I've grown a lot, man. You know, I've grown. I've been able to sort of perfect my approach. I've become more of a bridge, more of a translator. and not just being okay with being able to speak to sort of Washington and DC, but also trying to do my part to bring those two worlds together, right?
Yeah.
In a harmonious way where everybody can thrive and prosper.
Yeah.
You know, we still got a long way to go, but we've definitely made progress.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned earlier about what you want DC to look like for your little girl, and I think about the same thing for my boy, right? And you know, when my wife and I got together, one thing we really bonded over is that we are, you know, native Washingtonians, both fifth generation Washingtonians, and that we wanted to continue that legacy. One thing that the audience may not know is that this city, which I still call Chocolate City, but we know what's going on in regards to gentrification in the city. The Atlantic just wrote a beautiful piece about it. How do we begin to fix that problem? And how do we do it by also maintaining the culture within the city?
Nah, one of the things I think that's important, first of all, culture can't exist without the people that participate in that culture, right? So those two things are intertwined. If we're not able to stabilize the Black community and help them thrive, then the culture that we grew up in, it won't persist. Not here. It may go where they go, but it won't be here. So I think equity, equitable programming, economic opportunities, but in families, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is real families, right? This is what we can't have. We can't, that's necessary, right? And then things like what's the joke? Your seed, Murray, my seed. Like these, we really got to build community in that way, bro. I mean that, man, because these are the kind of steps that we have to take to fortify, Black people. But just like one thing, DC is the most gentrified place in America. It's the most moved to place in America.
Yeah.
And still very Black though, right? It's still very Black.
Right.
But in a lot of context of what we describing for your audience, sometimes it's like, but the displacement has been about Black people from here. Right. So where Black culture may still exist in DC,
right,
but the DC culture, right? And you got people that can move to Washington and not meet nobody from here. Like, you gotta really think about that, right? I don't even know. Like, I'd be a lot of different places. I don't know if you go to New York, wherever you can go to Boston, wherever you say gentrification has been a thing. First of all, none of those places was ever this Black.
Right.
When you and I were born, that's it, right? When you and I were born, this city was 72% African American. Now it's about 40%.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you gotta really think about the impact of that, right?
Yeah.
So everything's new. Everybody is new. And in me working in the work that I do, mass incarceration and people coming home from prison 10, 20, 30, 40 years from and I see what that looks like to that person. They're like, you might as well drop them off on Mars. They're like, what? And I'm talking about in the neighborhoods they spent whatever the time they've ever been free. They've spent it in their neighborhood, and it's literally unrecognizable. You know what I mean? And for real, some people can only be gone 5 years in DC.
And major changes happen.
Major changes, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, I'm saying all that to say that those are the kind of dynamics that's pressing down on the culture that we come from. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, but I remain, optimistic. But without an economic plan to empower Black people in this city, it's over, right? It's over. Like, we need a real economic strategy, but a lot of that has to do with the removal of barriers created by criminal history, right? Right. It has to do, because what also has developed that nobody talks about, there's now, is a racial, is an economic disconnect, a racial disconnect, but it's also a cultural disconnect. Speaking back to culture.
Yeah.
So if I'm not, it could be a lot of opportunity out here, but if I'm not a part of the culture that's getting the opportunities, right, then I'm gonna be isolated.
Yeah.
And that's what we see happen to people that come up in the culture that we come up in. Those of them that had, because what happened here too was so Black, in a lot of ways, and so local, right, that you ain't have to develop certain abilities to engage other people.
Right.
For
we
what?
Spoke our own language.
Exactly. And so much of, like, my last maybe decade of growth has really been about that, because I'm still not the best networker. I'm the type of person I could talk to anybody, but that person better be the one start the conversation.
Yeah.
Because if that person doesn't start the conversation,
yeah.
I may never say a word, but that's just some deep. That's our culture, though, right?
Yeah.
We don't. I'm not mad. I'm just not interested. You know what I mean? So working through that kind of stuff, and then I share that with you, and you get exactly what I'm saying. I don't even know if I'm articulating it to the broader audience, but for real, man. So it's little stuff like that I try to heighten the awareness of the generation coming behind us, that they're gonna have to be much more dynamic than you or I ever had to be. That's what I'm saying? Because your city is now a very cosmopolitan place. Like, just think about the fact that something in the water is coming here.
I was gonna go there. Yeah.
So, but I hope people understand that isn't. And for those who don't know, that's a music festival.
Yeah.
Created by the iconic Pharrell Williams. And it was in his hometown of Virginia Beach, but his cousin was a victim of police brutalities. But his cousin was killed in Virginia Beach. Nothing happened, so he moved the festival to DC. But I also think that, honestly, aside from that incident, something in the water is more fitting for the nation's capital and the most powerful nation in the world, because it really is a international festival.
Yes.
And and so with that, I think for us native Washingtonians, sometimes we don't even fully get where we from, because the other end of how you say people see this city, that's what this festival is sort of like a marriage of that. It's marriage of like blackness and culture and hip shit, but it's also saying that something like this needs to be in the center of the free world, which is Washington, D.C.
Yep, and that's what I was gonna say. I'm glad you went there, because that's what I was gonna start to finish this up with, because I know you do work like with the Commanders, right? It's still weird for me to say that, but like with the Washington football team now, the Commanders.
I was about to say with who?
Like we still not used to that.
I'm like, what? Okay, got you. Yeah, the Commanders.
You know, it's wild. We more used to hearing the Washington football team than the actual new name of the team. It's a little minute, man.
But no, wow, man.
Yeah, but you know, Jason Wright, who I know, you all have done work with him. You know, they've been trying to get that stadium back in DC. It's not looking promising, right? But I had DJ Heat on. She works with the Wizards and the Mystics, you know, in the WNBA. Organizations like that. Speaking of, you know, like with Pharrell Williams, and obviously working with, you know, Broccoli City. I had Jamon on from Broccoli City on last week, right? All of these investments in the city. Like, how important do you think it is for the local football team to invest back into the city, the local baseball team to invest back in the city, the local rapper and the local shop to invest back into the city, both culturally and financially?
No, I think I think it's paramount.
Yeah.
I think so right. That's why I appreciate the Commanders. I appreciate the things that, you know, the Wizards have done.
I need you to, so my internet, I need you to start that answer over, because the jump froze up for a second. So just start the answer over.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think it's super important for all of those entities that you named to invest in community and do it in a real way. Yeah. And also, I mean, as we talked about some of these economic opportunities that they come into these communities, extending that first, not just doing something that's like, you know, charitable, but something that's more sustainable. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I appreciate, like you mentioned Broccoli City, you know, and just thinking about how that has grown, right? Yeah. But also what has grown as they've grown is their linkages to people in the community. Yeah. And stuff, and doing work and doing things even when the like off peak time, if you will. You understand what I'm saying? Like I think about somebody like Daryl, that's a part of the Broccoli City team. Yep. And how our initial interaction, like about trying to get some young people some tickets to come to the festival. And Jamon, that's always been my man. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, he been trying to lock us in from the beginning. Yeah. But then that really grew into like real friendship
Right.
Real brotherhood, really checking on each other, really saying, how can I assist? How can I help? How can I connect the dots? How can I come speak to your classes of returning city? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that kind of model, and knowing that if you are a part of this community. So it's not about like doing me a favor. Right. It's a real business, it's real value in being tied to the community in that way. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
I think it's a real business play in doing so and being entrenched in the community, right? And I think the interesting thing about, so especially the sports teams, you know, at some point, and with DC now such a transient place, how do you create? Because, you know, I don't know, this is the type of city, the visiting team probably got almost as many fans as the home team.
Yeah, that's
but that
real.
got a lot to do with the fact that, well, something depending on what team we you know, we haven't been great.
Yeah, it's the performance, right? That's
part of it.
Yeah.
But aside from that, this is also a city full of people from somewhere else.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But with that, I think more of that community engagement would really create fans, right? It would create new fans, right? There's people that are moving or people that's growing up. You ain't gonna become a fan, you're not winning. You don't never see the people that operate, you know, as a part of your organization in their community, and particularly if I'm talking about like the Black community. So I would love to see, you know, and that go for restaurants though. That go for any of the other sort of like nightlife stuff. I hope people find a way to give back and to become a part of the community. Real.
Definitely. Tone, thank you so much, man. You know, I could talk to you for hours, bro. So I really appreciate you, man, taking time out. I know you're busy, man, and I don't say that just to be funny. Like, I know you got a lot of stuff going on, man. So taking time out to do this show, this thing you've been on almost every show I've ever hosted, but to do this show, it was definitely a pleasant change of pace to talk to you about fashion and sneakers, man. Keep doing the work you're doing. Keep at it. Keep doing it. We need you. You know that. I appreciate you, man. And I'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
All right.
My man. DC or not.
Big shout outs to Tony for joining the show. Big shout outs to you as always for joining me. Listen, we got dope stuff coming up this summer. A couple of small little tweaks to the show, only to keep things live and fresh. So keep it locked. Remember to follow me, MSR_Adam, MSR_Adam. Follow the team on My Feet Network and of course the Up on Game Network. Mind your mental health. Mind your physical health. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, be great.